Why do I keep reacting like this? I tell myself I'll stay calm. I promise I won't yell again. I swear I'll be more patient, more understanding, and more in control. But then it happens, the meltdown, the backtalk, the chaos. And then suddenly I'm snapping and spiraling, and I'm literally watching myself turn into the parent I swore I'd never be. And then afterwards, the guilt and the shame kicks in. And I tell myself, I should have been better. I should have known how to handle that so differently. But no matter how hard I try, I just can't seem to break the habit. Sound familiar? Well, what if I told you it's not just about willpower, that your reactions aren't actually random? They're programmed and shaped by deep, automatic thought patterns that you probably don't even realize that you have. So in this episode, we're going to uncover the hidden thoughts that control your behavior, the ones that drive your reactions, shape your emotions, and make parenting feel like so much harder than it needs to be. And more importantly, we're going to talk about how you can change them so you can finally break free from the guilt, from that overwhelm, and basically the emotional roller coaster that you never signed up for. Let's get into it. I'm Jackie Hall, and this is Beneath Behaviour, where we break down stress, reactions, and get to the heart of why we all do the things we do. We'll have real conversations, find real solutions, and have absolutely no judgment. Let's talk. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Beneath Behaviour. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about emotions, particularly emotions that relate to parenting, because we know that there's a lot of emotions that we feel during the course of raising our children. And I also wanted to kind of make this the next podcast because in the last episode, I deliberately made it quite simplistic, that I introduced you to the world of the 4 stressful thinking lenses. And if you've ever done any of my programs, you'll be very familiar with those lenses and have probably experienced them several times. And then once you learn those lenses, you then start to see them in everybody else, which is the idea, right? We want to understand ourselves. We want to understand other people. We want to understand our kids, because that's why we're calling this podcast Beneath Behavior, because we want to look at underneath why that behavior, whosever behavior it is, makes absolute sense. Now, if you didn't watch the last episode, that's completely fine. I'm going to go over those 4 lenses again for you to get an understanding of what they are and how they work. But in today's episode, I wanted to go into a little bit more depth as to how they relate to specific emotions, because, where I was being quite simplistic in the last episode, it was so that I could just introduce you to the idea of understanding that we have a narrative, a story that we tell ourselves, and it's always running in the background, and it's a very heavy contributor to how we're feeling and then thus how we're responding because of how we're feeling. So, hopefully for those of you who did watch the last one, you're already getting a sense of how those 4 lenses are contributing to your emotions, particularly as we start to stack up evidence of those 4 stressful thinking lenses and then stack up how we're feeling about the situations that we're facing. So for those of you who aren't aware, the 4 stressful thinking lenses are right versus wrong, missing out, could have, should have, and worth less. And basically what that means is that we often have a picture of the right way that life is supposed to go, and where as our brain is designed to do, it's designed to look for any potential wrong thing so it can know what to do about it. But over the years of experience of life, we have learned how to narrate the rights versus the wrongs in our lives. And we've learned that from a lot of different areas. We've developed belief systems from our experiences, our parents, our, religion, education, media, all of those sorts of things has developed a way of perceiving life. And so we're constantly looking through this lens of, is it right or is it wrong? And we tend to be indoctrinated in our society that if it's going right, then we're all good, we're ticking our boxes, we're feeling good about life. But if it's not going to plan or isn't matching our picture, we start to rate that as being wrong. And then we find evidence of, what it means that it's going wrong. And we start to look at all the things that we're missing out on. So I'm missing out on love, respect, experiences. I'm missing out, my child's missing out, or, I'm missing out on something that I feel I needed for life to be going right. And then that logic and reasoning part of the brain kicks in and says, well, why? Why am I missing out? Why am I on this wrong path? And it reasons that I or someone else should have or could have done something differently. And some of us are in the I should have camp, and some of us are in the they should have camp. But basically, we're blaming someone, whether it's ourselves or someone else. And so from that perspective, we then start to draw value judgments about ourselves and our lives. That because life hasn't gone to plan, because I'm missing out or someone else is missing out because life isn't going to plan and I should have or they should have done something wrong, it means something about me, because the brain is always geared to be asking that question, what does this mean and what does this mean about me? And so we're judging ourselves or judging the situation, and it's all four of those lenses are all triggering you to feel a certain way. Now, what's interesting about these lenses is that you will feel all four of them. Whenever you're feeling stress, all four of them will be happening in that narrative. It's just that one often seems more dominant than the other. And I found that, like, for myself personally, that missing out lens tends to be the most dominant. I'm usually looking at what I didn't get, what I've missed out on, what could have been better, how it's not enough. All of those sorts of things are usually what I notice first. And then I'm kind of, well, obviously I'm noticing the right versus wrong, but I tend to kind of dwell on the missing out lens a little bit more. And then the could have, should have comes in. So it's missing out. So it doesn't have to be 1, 2, 3, 4, right, wrong, missing out, could have, should have, worth less. Sometimes it's like 2, 3, 1, 4. Sometimes it's 2, 3, 4, 1. So I might go lens 2, I'm missing out because life hasn't gone to plan and I should have done things differently, and therefore it means something about me. Now, as you become more aware of these and you learn how to upgrade and change that thinking, which I am going to teach you how to do, you start to focus on those lenses less because you catch them quickly and they can't spiral when you are so aware of them and you know how to change them. And that takes practice. That takes repetition and consistency. Because when you think about it, you have been practicing those four lenses sometimes for your entire life without being aware of them. And this is why I love these lenses so much, is because when we're first trying to become aware of that story that we're telling ourselves that's triggering our stress, it can be kind of hard to kind of pinpoint every single thought that we've had. You know, we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are the same, like 95% of them or 90% of them are the same as what we had yesterday. So we're telling ourselves the same stories. So we have to have this awareness of what those stories are. And sometimes, and this is what I really want to talk to you about today, sometimes they're not conscious. Because what happens is every time you have a thought, you release chemicals into the body, and the body gets used to those chemicals, those hormones, and starts to literally adapt its cells in order to be prepared for the chemicals, the hormones that are getting released. So if all of a sudden you decide, I'm not going to feel this way anymore, I'm going to change how I think. And this might have actually happened to you in the past. You might have gone, right, I'm going to think more positive. I'm going to think, differently to how I was. I'm going to be a changed person, new parent. Happens all the time. I must have changed a million times before I understood all of this. And it just went back to the old patterns. And here's why. Because if you start thinking differently, you'll start creating different hormones and different chemicals into the body. And the body's going to go, what are you doing? Like, this is not what we're used to. You have spent days, weeks, months, years, decades sending us these chemicals of stress, these hormones of stress. We've literally rearranged as cell receptors to receive these chemicals and these hormones. And now all of a sudden you're sending me these new ones and we don't understand. So it sends a message back up through the spine to the brain, and the brain goes, hey, there's a mismatch. Why is there a mismatch? Oh, that's right, because you're getting it wrong. Look at all the evidence that I have of all the things that you've done wrong and all the reasons why you're missing out. And you should be doing better than this. You should know better than this. What makes you think that you're going to be able to think differently for like 2 minutes and then I'm going to change? It doesn't work like that, because I have loads of evidence that you're doing it wrong. You're always doing it wrong. You're such a failure, or that you should really worry about this. So you've got some really convincing history and memories there that are going to entice you to come back into that old narrative that's going to release those chemicals into the body and make you go, there's that fix. And the cells are going to go, oh, it's like a drug fix. Thank you for my drug fix, because this is now what we're used to. And then you go, oh, this never works for me. I'm never going to be able to change. I'm going to be stuck in this habit forever. Keep going is my advice to you, because what you're doing is you're retraining the cells in the body just as much as you're retraining your neural pathways. You have to find evidence of a different way of looking so that you can give the new narrative more reason or more evidence that it's true. And then you can start to feel in alignment with how you're thinking. And then you'll start to train that nervous system to, get used to new chemicals, new feelings in the body that align with how you're now thinking. So the first thing is to understand that there is like a physical, chemical, biological process that you're going to go through when you're trying to change these emotional feelings. And the longer that you've been doing it, the more evidence you're going to have stacked up. So we have to be really aware, one, of that narrative, which is what we talked about in a very basic way in the last episode. We have to be aware of that narrative and how it's kind of playing out in our day-to-day. But we also have to be aware that sometimes our body is leading the way and it's nothing conscious. So you might find that over years of trying to get the kids ready for school, for example, that you have found that it is, and it might even be weeks, that it's been a battle, that every single day it feels like you get up and you nag them to get out of bed and nag them to get dressed, and then they forget 20 times what they've got to do, and you've got to repeat yourself 100 times, and then you're doing all this work first thing in the morning, and it just feels like it's just so chaotic and full of arguments and full of conflict, or they're fighting with each other. And your nervous system is just so wired that it learns to be wired at that time of the morning. And so you can open your eyes and you haven't even had a thought yet. Nothing has even happened. And you're automatically feeling stressed, or you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling angry, because your body has been trained, well, it's daylight, I must be angry. That's how we feel. So let's send a message to the brain to start looking for all the things that are going to go wrong today or could go wrong today, so that we can reinforce those feelings in the body, right? Does this sound really familiar to you? I want you to just kind of stop for a second and think about your day even today. And start to, pay attention to the emotions that you've felt. Can you recognize those lenses playing out? Can you recognize a pattern in how you've been feeling and thinking? Is it that your thoughts came first and then you had the emotions? Or did you habitually feel a certain way and then the thoughts came next? You started looking for evidence that matched how you were feeling. And I remember a couple of weeks ago, and this is an interesting one, and some of you may relate. I rarely drink alcohol, right? But I had a big night because I'd, been quite stressed. I've been rolling around in my own narrative at work about various things that were going on. And my son was having a Triple J Hottest 100 party, and I just love him and his friends. Like, he's 18, they're all 18. We've known them since they were like young, and they've just all become my kids, and I just love them, and I love having them over. I just love teenage kids, young adults. They're such a vibe, right? They're so easygoing and fun loving. And they were like, Jack, are you going to come and have a drink with us? And I'm like, yeah, why not? And I ended up drinking way too much than I should have. And so the next morning I paid for it. And when I woke up, obviously I was feeling bleh, and with that often comes this feeling of depression or feeling low, right? So as I was feeling low, I actually started to catch myself looking for reasons why I was feeling low. What was I missing out on? What was going wrong in my life? What should I have been doing differently? Why was my life bad? Why was it crappy? And then I caught myself. I went, Jack, stop. You're just hungover, love. You don't need to have a narrative about it. This is just the reality of what's going on when you have a hangover. You just feel down, you got to write it out, and tomorrow's another day you'll feel better. Do not catastrophize anything, dramatize anything, or be emotional about anything. Just don't let those thoughts go in your head. So that's kind of a good example of, well, it's not a good example as in like I'm not a good role model, but it's an example of how your feelings can dictate your mindset. So this can happen on that level, or it can actually happen because you have been trained into an emotional state of being through repetition and consistency of feeling that way. So when we're trying to change, we have to take both a top-down approach where we're changing that narrative deliberately, also a bottom-up approach. And I spoke about this a little bit in my last podcast where I gave you that quick coherence technique that you could already start to change up to 1,400 chemical biological responses in the body by just doing a quick shift and reset. So if it was a quick little breathing technique that you can do, it was designed by the Heart Math Institute, which I'm a trainer for. So if you haven't seen that one, jump onto that last episode so you can watch that whole episode and understand what on earth I'm talking about. But something else that I wanted to do on this episode is really kind of match up those lenses to the different emotions that we feel. So, for example, if we are feeling a sense of overwhelm, overwhelm is very much this kind of right versus wrong lens. Now, remember that all four lenses are always going to be there within your story, but one's usually more dominant than the other. So when we're feeling overwhelmed, often we're on this kind of right versus wrong. So we often have a list of all the things that we're trying to get right simultaneously, and we're worried that we're going to get them wrong, or we're worried that we're not enough. And then the narrative will keep going that says, because if I don't get them all done, if I don't do it all, if I don't be it all, if I don't have it all, then someone's going to miss out, whether it's me, whether it's my child. It's not going to be enough. I'm not going to get an experience that I feel like I'm supposed to get in order to be on my right path. And I feel like I should be able to tick all these boxes and get all these things done at once. And if that's not possible, I just don't know what that's going to mean for my life. Or maybe I do. Maybe I already have a value judgment on what that means. And so we're stacking up all of these things that we feel like we need to do, and we need to do now, and we need to do right now. So we're not actually breaking it down and going, okay, I need to deal with this moment right now. And then I might put that down and I'm going to deal with this moment right now. So it might mean, for those of you who have young children or those of you who have busy lives, that you are literally dealing with your toddler. 2 seconds later, you're putting that down and you're picking up the baby. And then 2 minutes later, you're stopping that and you're stirring the pot on the stove. You know, you've got to be deliberate about the one thing that you can do in this moment, because otherwise we're just going to kind of stack it all up and it's just going to be overwhelming because you're only one person and you're only able to do one thing at a time. So what we've got to think about in terms of those lenses is, what is it that I'm trying to get right? Why is it so important that I feel like I have to get all of these things right simultaneously? Am I giving myself any room for error? Am I giving myself any room for the reality that I actually can't control all of this right now? And am I getting stuck in that fear lens that everything's going to go wrong and my child's going to miss out, or I'm going to miss out if I don't get it right, and I don't get it right in this particular moment? Because what happens with these lenses is that we get so stuck in this kind of narrow viewpoint, and we're thinking that if it doesn't go right, then the world's going to end. And we're not allowing ourselves to accept the reality that life's going to have its ebbs and flows and its ups and downs. And there's going to be value in the unwanted. And there's going to be times where things don't go to plan, but there'll be opportunity in that. There'll be learning in that. We're not always going to get it right. So these are upgrades that I will be doing a specific episode on that can help you to kind of shift that mindset. But for now, I want you to be aware of the overwhelm. And I want you to start to ask yourself specific questions when you feel overwhelmed about what is the right path that you're trying to get yourself onto. What are you worried will happen if you don't get all of these things right in this moment? What is the fear behind that overwhelm, or what is the pressure behind that overwhelm that's you trying to get things right and prevent things from going wrong? Now, the next emotion that I want to tackle is anger. Now, anger is interesting because it starts with that should have, could have lens. So it's kind of like should have, could have, and right versus wrong, 1 and 3. So could have, should have is where we're thinking, I should be able to control this situation to go to plan. I should be able to control things so it meets my picture. And the fact that I didn't do that or couldn't do that sends me into a little bit of a panic. And so I either use anger as a way to control, or I feel anger because I couldn't control. So be aware of that. What is that judgment that you have on this situation? And do you have a belief that says, I should have been able to control that? Interestingly, anger has its ties in anxiety. Anxiety is very much lens 1 and 3. Anxiety is all about control and prevent. That I believe that I should be able to do more, be more, have more, learn more, control more in order to get life right. And if I can't do that, then I fear that I'm going to miss out on something and my life is going to be worth less. So the anxiety that we can feel is very much future focused, that I'm worried about what will happen. I'm worried about what ifs. And it's very action orientated, because with anxiety, I'm always trying to do something to get life right. I'm always trying to do something in order to prevent something from going wrong. And I try to micromanage every single element of my life because I'm so attached to getting life right and preventing it from going wrong. Because underneath that, if we go up another layer, somewhere along the line, we have learned that I should be able to control, or the only way to be safe, or the only way to feel okay is to control. And when I'm not able to do that, I panic. And panic can come out in anger, or it can come out in panic attacks. It can come out in shutdown. It can come out in many different behaviors, but it's this deep-seated fear of not having control. And it's in conflict with reality. And we talked about this in the last episode of being that stress is a conflict between belief and reality. Well, emotional stress anyway, is a conflict between belief and reality. So we think that it still comes back to these 4 lenses again, this idea that life is supposed to go, or this belief that life is supposed to go the way that I want it to go. And that's in conflict with reality. That if I don't get that picture right, I'm going to miss out. There'll be someone to blame, and it's going to be my fault, or it's going to impact me or my life in some way. It's going to mean something about me. So anxiety is all about, it's action oriented, it's future focused, and it's all about control and prevent. And if your child experiences anxiety as well, this will all be going on for them as well. That there'll be some sort of story that they're telling, or if it's you that's feeling anxious, a story that you're telling that just focuses on this attachment to this picture of the way you want it to go, or a anticipated right path that you're wanting to get to, or a wrong path you're trying to avoid. And that's going to trigger those emotions within you. So again, it's about becoming aware of what must I be thinking to be feeling this level of anxiety? What must I be thinking to be feeling anger? What must I be thinking to be feeling overwhelmed? Now, I want to talk about depression, because what's interesting is that the lenses and how they play out in depression is the complete opposite of anxiety. And sometimes it feels like anxiety, you can do anxiety and depression at the same time, but they're actually 2 different lenses. Now, all 4 of them are there, remember, but with anxiety, you're looking at lens 1 and 3, right versus wrong, and could have, should have. With depression, you're looking at lens 2 and 4, which is the missing out lens and the worthless lens. So what we're doing in the depression mindset is we're looking for all the things we're missing out on, the things I don't have, the experiences I'm not having, what I'm lacking, what's not good. So I'm looking for a loss, a void in my life, or experiences that I'm not getting. And then I'm making strong value judgments about what that means about me, that I'm a failure, I'm missing out, and I've failed at life. I'm a failure, I'm worthless, I am not good enough, I've never been good enough, because life isn't reaching the picture that I've wanted to get to, and I should be trying to do that. So what happens when we feel that level of depression where we're constantly looking for evidence of those lenses? I'm looking for evidence of what I'm missing in my life, the void in my life. I'm looking for evidence of how worthless, useless, hopeless, failure that I am. Is I'm going to start to feel so bad about my life that I just think, what's the point? What's the point in trying? Because every single time I try to get my life right, I just end up failing. So I'll just rather not do those things. So while anxiety was very action driven, the depression mindset is the opposite. It's quite withdrawn. It's quite shut down, because if I don't take any action, it's almost like a self-protection. If I don't take any action, then I'll prevent myself from feeling even more like a failure than I already do. So I just stop trying. And what can often happen is, while we don't do the mindset of depression, anxiety at the same time, we can very much swing from one to the other. So we can feel that sense of, we can try and be in that anxiety mindset. I've got to control, I've got to prevent, and I should be able to do more, be more, have more, learn more, control more to get life right. And then it doesn't work, and we go into missing out and worthless. It never happens for me. I'm never able to do this anymore. No one ever cares about me. I don't get any respect. I don't get any love. I'm just never able to get anything right. And I'm just so hopeless at life. I'm just so stupid and, so incompetent. And, sometimes we can even think incorrectly that our children should have a better parent and that everybody else is so much better than we are. And I know what that feels like, because these are the emotions that I felt myself that you've heard about in my first episode. I get this whole swing between anxiety and depression. I sat in that achiever mentality and do more, be more, have more, learn more, control more, and then fell into that depression mindset where it was just like feeling hopeless and feeling like I'm never going to be good enough. I battled with that not good enough for years and years and years, till I learned how to turn it all around. And then what would happen, and this is what happens, this is the swing between depression and anxiety, is that you sit there for a little bit in the depression mindset, and you feel down on yourself, and you feel you withdraw from life, and you stop making plans, and you stop doing all those things that you've tried to do, and you just keep feeling like a failure about. And then after you do that for a little while, you sit there and you go, I can't sit here. I've got responsibilities. My children need me. You've got to step up as a mum. So all I need to do is do more, be more, have more, learn more, control more. I should be doing more. I should be doing better. I should be learning more so that I can get life right and prevent things from going wrong. So I get back into that anxiety mindset and I do. And then something doesn't go to plan. I go straight back into that missing out lens and that worthless lens. And I would swing from one to the other and one to the other. But what often happens, and I've seen this so often, particularly in some of the retreats that I've worked with, where I was working with clients with drug and alcohol addictions, so severe mental health issues, is that the more we would do that swing, the longer we stayed in the depression mindset, because we just kept stacking up all the evidence we had, or we thought we had, of what we were missing out on and how worthless we were. So being aware of that is the start. Recognizing that there is a pre-programmed narrative that you have literally trained yourself to think like and feel like, and remembering those cells in the body, that the cells have trained themselves to get used to that state of being. And so to reverse it, not only do we need to change how we think, the top down, we also need to retrain the nervous system, the bottom up. And this will be the same for your kids as well. If any of your kids are experiencing anxiety and depression, we're needing to help them to find new evidence of a different way to think, a different way to feel, and a different way to behave. So all three of those, and we can come at it from any one of those entry points. It doesn't always need to be, you've got to change how you think. And that's why in today's episode, I really wanted to, just delve a little bit deeper into how these lenses kind of interact with those emotions. So have a think about what emotions you repetitively feel over the last week or even over the last month, could even be over the last few years, and see if you can recognize those lenses that we've spoken about today and how you keep finding evidence of what you have your attention on, and start questioning that. We need to start challenging that narrative. Now, I am going to do an episode on upgrades, and I am going to teach you how you can start upgrading all four of those lenses with 4 upgrades so that we can start to change our narrative. Because what will happen when you start to do this is you will automatically start thinking in new ways, feeling in new ways, and you will organically teach your children to have that mindset too. This is why I work with parents and their emotions and their mindset first, because you guys are the ones that are going to help your children. And don't worry if you have older children, because you can still influence them. And, this podcast is going to be about how to communicate and how to understand, what's going on for them and understand what's going on for you, and how you can kind of bridge that gap and repair any conflicts. And we'll even be talking with a mum who is wanting to repair a relationship with her daughter. So stay tuned for that one. It's going to be a great one that really helps you to understand how you can reverse any kind of conflict between you and your child at whatever age, whether they're older or younger, or you're just starting to see that happen now. But for now, just be aware. What must I be thinking to be feeling this way? And remember, just be gentle with yourself. Some of these patterns that you become aware of were entrenched a very long time ago. And sometimes they were created from a place of necessity, that there was an experience that you might have had where you needed to adopt certain beliefs and certain behaviors even to protect you from emotional pain or sometimes even physical pain. So I'm by no means saying that this is really easy to do and all you got to do is change how you think and change how you feel and you'll be all good. Sometimes you do need extra assistance. Sometimes you need to work through with a trained professional how you can, first identifying where that story came from. You don't always have to know where the story came from. Sometimes it can be insightful and it can be helpful, but you can just start changing your story. You can start challenging those belief systems. So if you're saying, I'm worthless, say, well, where's your evidence of that? So if it was fact, then that would mean that everybody who made a mistake or everybody who's done what you've done is worthless. Is that always the case? Or is it just that you made a mistake? Or is it just that, you didn't know any different? Or you had other patterns running that you weren't aware of? Or that you're just in the process of learning how to change and grow and evolve out of those old patterns? Because you aren't worthless. Life isn't going wrong. It's just that sometimes life has its ups and downs. And sometimes you do miss out on things. And sometimes you make mistakes. And these are all the things that we've got to start accepting in our life and in our journey of parenting specifically. Because as you start to upgrade and change these thoughts and become aware of them, you too, just like all of the other participants that have learnt these lenses too, you're going to start seeing them everywhere. You're going to start seeing that it's in language. You'll watch the news and you'll hear it in our politicians and you'll hear it on these horrible reality TV shows that we're all getting addicted to watching. And you'll hear it from your kids and their friends. And, you might go to the gym and you'll hear people talking and complaining and blaming and, rolling in the mud. And we don't get clean when we're rolling in the mud. I also have another saying that I'm going to have to bleep out, but we roll around in our pit of, You get the picture. So we can't swear on YouTube. So I have to actually delete it out. But we do. We roll around in our pit of and we don't get clean from rolling in the mud. So we have to first be aware of the mud, and then we have to learn how to train ourselves to get out of the mud. So that's basically what we're wanting to do. It's the start of getting beneath behavior, because when we get beneath behavior, it's going to start to make sense. And when it starts to make sense why you or why someone else does what they do, we tend to then have more compassion. We have more, we're more solution focused, because if this makes sense to them based on how they're thinking, how they're feeling, why they felt like what they were doing was an appropriate course of action or an appropriate feeling to feel, then we can start to go, okay, well, how can I help them? So in summary, the way that you think and you feel is a habit. It comes from repetitive thought processes, repetitive feelings in the body. And the way to change that is to recognize how you're thinking and recognizing how you're feeling. And sometimes it's easier to become aware of your emotions first and then ask yourself, what must I be thinking to be feeling this way? So today, as you go about your day, be aware of those thoughts, be aware of those emotions. Beneath behavior, there's always more to the story. See you next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Beneath Behavior podcast. Now don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast channel so you never have to miss an episode. And we'll see you next time.